Imagine a blast so powerful it flattened 80 million trees, wiped out 2,000 square kilometers of forest, and was felt thousands of kilometers away. A blast so violent that people thought the end of the world had come. It wasn't a nuclear bomb, it wasn't an earthquake, and it wasn't a volcano. This happened in 1908, long before humans built weapons of mass destruction. And to this day, more than a century later, scientists are still debating what really happened over Tunguska. This is the story of the mystery explosion that nearly ended the world. History is full of forgotten disasters, events that shook the earth but faded from memory. But the Tunguska event is unlike anything else. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, in the remote wilderness of Siberia, a fireball streaked across the sky. Moments later, the sky exploded with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs. There was no warning. No one saw it coming. The shock wave was so immense, it shattered windows 600 miles away. Seismic vibrations were recorded as far as England. For days, the skies of Europe glowed bright enough that people could read newspapers at midnight. Yet when scientists finally reached the site, decades later, they found something even stranger. No crater, no meteorite, nothing but devastation. What could cause the largest explosion in recorded history and still leave no trace? It was a calm summer morning in the remote Tunguska region of Siberia. At around 7:17 a.m., hunters and villagers saw a glowing fireball moving rapidly across the sky. Eyewitnesses described it as a fiery sphere, brighter than the sun, a column of blue-white light splitting the heavens. The sky was torn apart, and then came a thunder louder than any cannon. Moments later, the heavens erupted. A massive explosion lit up the sky. The blast wave flattened everything in its path. In the epicenter, trees were snapped like matchsticks, lying in perfect radial patterns pointing away from ground zero. People were thrown from their homes. Horses and reindeer dropped dead instantly. The heat was so intense that forests burst into flames. Survivors described the earth shaking, the air turning to fire, and the sound of the sky tearing itself apart. The explosion released energy equal to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT, about 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The area of devastation stretched across 2,150 square kilometers, larger than the entire city of New York. Over 80 million trees were destroyed. Shock waves circled the planet twice. But the most chilling detail? If the blast had occurred just 4 hours later, it would have happened over St. Petersburg, a city of over 2 million people at the time. It would have erased the city, killing millions and altering history forever. In other words, the world came within hours of catastrophe. News of the disaster spread slowly. Siberia was remote, communication limited. It wasn't until 1927, almost 20 years later, that the first Soviet scientific expedition reached the site. What they found shocked them. Trees flattened in all directions, as if blasted outward from a central point. At the epicenter, strange growth patterns and scorched soil. But no crater, no fragments of a meteorite, nothing that could explain such devastation. How could the largest explosion in modern history leave behind nothing? For more than a century, scientists and conspiracy theorists have debated the cause. 1. Meteor airburst. The most widely accepted explanation, a space rock, a meteor about 50 to 100 meters wide entered Earth's atmosphere at 40,000 miles per hour. Before it hit the ground, the intense pressure and heat caused it to explode mid-air, releasing its energy in a massive shock wave. This explains why there was no crater. The meteor disintegrated in the sky. But skeptics point out that no definitive meteor fragments have ever been recovered. 2. Comet explosion. Some scientists suggest it wasn't a rock, but an icy comet nucleus. A comet made of ice and dust would vaporize in the atmosphere, leaving almost no debris. This could explain the strange glowing skies over Europe for days afterward, caused by water vapor and ice crystals in the upper atmosphere. 3. Natural gas eruption. Another theory suggests a massive underground release of methane gas ignited, causing the explosion. But critics argue the blast pattern was far too symmetrical for a ground-based explosion. 4. Alien encounter. Here's where it gets weird. Some theorists claim the Tunguska blast was caused by an alien spacecraft crashing, or even deliberately self-destructing to avoid hitting a populated area. Supporters point to eyewitnesses who described a cylindrical object in the sky. But without evidence, this remains pure speculation. 5. Tesla's death ray inventor Nikola Tesla was experimenting with wireless energy transmission at the time. Conspiracy theorists claim he accidentally triggered the Tunguska explosion with his death ray, a directed energy beam from his Wardenclyffe Tower in New York. Tesla himself once hinted that he could send energy across the globe, and Tunguska happened just months after his tests. Coincidence, or something more sinister? In recent decades, scientists have used satellites, soil samples, and computer models to reanalyze Tunguska. Seismic data confirms the blast happened in the atmosphere, 5 to 10 kilometers above ground. Soil samples show traces of silicate and nickel, elements common in meteorites. Tree resin from the site contains high levels of isotopes consistent with space rock material. The consensus today: Tunguska was most likely a cosmic airburst, a meteor or comet exploding before impact. But the mystery isn't fully solved. Why haven't we found large fragments? Why was the devastation so perfectly symmetrical? Questions remain. Tunguska wasn't the first, or the last, cosmic strike. In 2013, a smaller meteor exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia, injuring 1,500 people and damaging thousands of buildings. That explosion was just 1/10 the size of Tunguska. If a Tunguska-sized event happened over a modern city today, New York, London, Mumbai, it would kill millions instantly. And here's the terrifying part. Scientists estimate that objects of Tunguska's size enter Earth's atmosphere every 300 to 500 years, which means we're due. The Tunguska event changed how humanity sees the skies. It showed us that Earth is not safe, that from above, without warning, destruction can fall. It inspired research into asteroids, comets, and planetary defense. Today, space agencies around the world track thousands of near-Earth objects because of Tunguska. Yet, despite all our science, the mystery still lingers. What exactly exploded above Siberia that summer morning? The Tunguska event remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. It was the largest explosion in modern times, yet left no crater, no wreckage, and no clear answers. It reminds us how fragile civilization is, how close we came by chance to losing millions of lives in 1908. And it forces us to ask, if the world nearly ended once before, what will we do when it happens again? History hides disasters, mysteries, and warnings for the future. If you want to uncover more hidden events like Tunguska, subscribe now and join me as we explore the forgotten stories that shaped our world. Because sometimes, history doesn't just explain the past, it warns us about the future.